Hello, thanks for coming this evening. I'm Kristen Baldwin from Entertainment Weekly, and please help me welcome the cast, some of the cast of Four of the People, Britt Robertson, Ben Rappaport, and Ben Shenkman. The bands. We're gonna have to go with Ben S and Ben R just to keep it straight. So first of all, you guys have all done, a lot of TV work. What do you look for when you're considering a project, and what was it about this show that interested you? Anyone can start.
Who wants to start, gentlemen? Men first.
I think when I'm first looking for a character to play, I look for someone that there's something about them that I can immediately connect with, so that I can bring some sort of authenticity and life experience to the role I'm playing. So that's obviously the first thing for me, but then also the material. I mean, this material was just, it's a home run.
What did you connect with in terms of your character?
In terms of Seth?
Yeah.
I mean, Seth is kind of like he's a non-confrontational kind of, nervous kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have that in my personality. So I think that was an easy sell.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
I don't relate to that, but I can appreciate it. I think for me, I was looking, I really enjoyed the script. I didn't even think that I'd be able or capable of playing Sandra at all. I've never done anything like this show before. I've certainly never played a lawyer, and so I thought that it would be a really interesting challenge for me to just audition and see kind of what happens. And then I did audition, and then I got the part, and then I was, sort of thrust into that world. And it's been really fun for me. And particularly, I love the fact that Sandra is not in a relationship of any sort. She's very, work-driven. And I keep saying this, and I feel like people don't like it, but she's seemingly asexual, throughout the season. The only sort of relationship she has is with her best friend, and that's everything to her. But I like that a lot about a woman, because I feel like there are a lot of those women, especially in their 20s, where they're not necessarily looking to find love, just looking to do that career thing, Well,
I also find that as a viewer, I'm shipping her with some of the other female characters in that I want to see more friendships, like her with the character played by Susanna Flood. I want to see those two develop a friendship, so I understand that. Ben S., what intrigued you about
What do I look for?
Yes.
A doctor or a lawyer. And I say, that's for me. No, I think I didn't articulate this till just now as I was thinking about it, but I think what I look for, especially with TV, is some little surprise, some little lift in what you're asked to do or say that makes you go, all right, I didn't see that coming, or I thought something else was coming and it's something different. And it can be very small, and I don't mean like a big plot surprise. I mean just something in the way the thoughts flow and the language flow. And in this, I don't really only had for this the speech that is in here where I explain, we have to make an example, and every so often someone has to, an ordinary person has to break the law, and just something about the way that speech was written. I just like the way the argument flowed, and it's just Paul's talent, I think, for the language is heightened, and it's good dialogue, it's banter and everything, but he's just got a great brain, and he just makes sure that what people say is thinkable in the moment, and that's the fun thing to do as an actor, I think. So that's what I liked about this, and that's what I do look for, I think.
And Paul has a unique brand of humor that really comes through in the characters and in the dialogue. You really, if you know Paul, you know his sensibility, and I think that comes through in each and every one of us in a really interesting and unique way.
Yeah, it has a very, it's a dramatic show, but there's humor throughout, which makes, everyone instantly kind of relatable. Britt, you said in one interview that you could have auditioned for Sandra or for the role of Allison, which is now played by Jasmine Savoy Brown, but you felt more connected to Sandra as a character. Can you explain a little bit about what that connection was?
Yeah, it goes back to the same sort of thought that I liked having the opportunity, particularly as a female, to not be someone's girlfriend or a love interest or even have to deal with that. I've just done it so much. And like, I got my own relationships to deal with, It feels odd to then take it to the small screen. I don't know. I just connected with Sandra, and I loved this idea that she was just a young woman who worked so hard to get to where she was, and there was no way any man or female or anything was going to get in the way of her doing her job to the best of her ability. So that was I was like, yeah, that girl. I like that one.
I like it. She ain't got time for that. So Ben S., you were so funny as the lovingly awkward Jeremiah on Royal Pains. And here you get to be funny as Roger, but he's a man with sort of almost an excessive amount of confidence. So as a performer, can you talk about those two experiences and how they compare and contrast?
They contrast very enjoyably. I think I would have been warier of playing Roger if I hadn't had the chance to play Jeremiah, because I think, I don't know, you'll probably relate to this as actors, like, after a while you find a certain thing may dog you as an actor, and I don't mean necessarily typecasting. Sometimes it's just it's a story element that you find you come across again and again and again. And something I always found that I began to be wary of was coldness and soullessness, which I knew was not coming from how people felt about me personally, which meant that it was a kind of projection about the type of person I am, and that began to feel a little bit poisonous to me. And so I think I would have been on guard against that a few years ago if someone said this, I don't want to be the guy who's got no soul in this. And but Jeremiah was so soulful, and I really had such a satisfying experience connecting with that and the vulnerability of that. And I just think that helped me go, okay, so, now I don't mind a guy who can, in this case, we're mistaking him for having no soul, because you have only seen the pilot, but in this world, there are no people with no souls, in Paul's world, I don't think. So, it's nice now I like the idea of starting there, and then, I trust it to unfold from there. So, that was a big part of it.
And Ben R., your debut TV role was in Outsourced, which was had a really loyal audience. Fans really loved it, but it, just ran for one season. When you look back on that experience now, what did you take away from it as a performer and in terms of what you learned about the industry and all of that?
Yeah, that was a big experience for me because that was my first real on-camera experience. I graduated from Juilliard 2 years before, and the only experience I'd had was on stage. So it was a year's worth of training, essentially, of how to be on set, how to work on camera, and just the technical aspects of everything. So I look at that year as just another year of my training, and I have a lot of fond memories of it, and I made some of my best friends that I still have to this day. Two of them stood up at my wedding just a couple of months ago. So yeah, it's a very important experience for me.
And you learned the power of TV fandom, I would imagine, just because, obviously fans get really connected to these characters.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
You talked about this a little bit upstairs. Playing a doctor or a lawyer, there's always jargon, and you have to learn the jargon. What is your technique for learning, the long speeches or the terms that you don't know? Britt, I've heard you talk before about this is something that is a challenge for you.
Yes. For me, it was always just about knowing it as well as specifically for the summations and the closing arguments and even just the cross examinations. I just needed to know it backwards and forwards so that I didn't have to think about it and I wasn't lost in my head trying to come up with the next word. So for me, as soon as I would always talk to Paul, the creator, and say like, do you think this is locked? Do you think you're going to be changing this? Because I really want to start, learning this. And I know it would drive him crazy, but at the end of the day, it was, hugely beneficial to the show. So as soon as I had the ability to start learning it, I would just, be going to the Starbucks, running my lines, or like walking around Paramount, learning my lines. And I would just say it over and over again. So that way, a couple days before we would shoot it, I would have the time to just go over the rhythms and the points that I wanted to make, or, the tone, or certain ideas that I wanted to make sure were communicated. That way that, the creativity could be left for the shooting process, but the words were never going to be the thing that's keeping me from getting to the creative point.
Can I just add something to that? It's so well written, especially those closing arguments, that it's really quite easy. We were just saying upstairs, it's some of the easiest stuff to learn, and it can be 2 pages, 2.5 pages, but it's like learning a Shakespeare piece. There's like all this great alliteration, and the rhythms make sense, and it's like learning a beautiful long piece of music. And when you have writing like that, if you can make it sing, I mean, it just makes it that much easier.
And Ben, as you've been in other legal dramas before, do you have a technique down, or did you feel less daunted by the dialogue since you experienced it before on other shows?
I'm so curious about this myself.
Really? No, I'm kind of a lines brain. I mean, not to sound like cavalier about it, but if I'm, and I guess it being well written helps, but I tend to look at it, and if I understand the story of what I'm saying, it kind of sticks, and then that's it. Sorry.
Britt is not buying that answer.
So frustrating.
Sorry about that, Britt. Yeah.
So one thing that Shondaland shows are known for are their casts are very active on social media, and they often live tweet along with fans, and they're very interactive. And a lot of performers have a love-hate relationship with social media, and its sort of increasing role in promoting a show and all of that. And I would like to know where each of you stand on that. Ben S., I know you're not really on.
I get an old guy pass on.
All right,
so
Ben
lucky.
What is
You're
that?
pretty active.
Yeah, I try. I've gotten better over the last couple of years. But yeah, there's that weird line of like, how closely do you want to be? How open do you want to be with opening yourself up to certain conversations and certain attacks, really? And I don't know. I don't really know what that balance is. I haven't really done the live tweeting thing before. I know that's going to be a big thing.
Are you going to do it coming up tomorrow?
I think it's kind of part of the deal. It's the Shondaland kind of thing. Like
I'm not doing it.
You're not doing it?
I'm against it. I mean, I have to say.
I don't know.
But my wife is always on the phone when we're watching TV together, and I'm like, this is our time. Let's watch the show. So I don't want to encourage people to be on their phones when they're watching the show. I want them to watch it.
Tom Verica, one of our executive producers, is really great about Twitter, and he has this thing where he carves out an hour a week for a hashtag Ask Tom. And so basically, if anyone wants to ask him a question, you just have the hashtag. I think it's kind of good. I like the appointment nature of that. So it's not it's a little more official or something. I don't know.
I mean, look, there's no judgment either way. However, I'm a little stubborn. I don't like for people to tell me what to do unless I'm, it's literally contractually obligated. And
it's not in this case?
I don't think so. I'm sure someone will tell me if it is. I don't think I would have signed up for that. But I've been pretty inactive on social media for a while. I haven't been on my Twitter for about 4 years, except for to tweet about a charity that I really believe in, and I had my friend do it. It was a long story, but and on Instagram, it's all basically charity oriented. And the thing is as soon as you start engaging, it's just you open that door and you can't stop. And for me, I don't know where, it's the same thing. Like, I don't know where that line is, and I don't know how, because, you know, am I the girl that just only Instagrams about her shows and her movies and her stuff? I don't think so. That doesn't feel like me. But also, you know, they like it when you do it. So I don't know. I feel like right now I'm choosing not to, and I think that'll change. I did a podcast for Wee Sam, who plays Jay on the show, and I'm a big fan of his, personally, professionally. I think he's a great human being. And the only thing that I really want to do is like Instagram about his podcast. I don't know. It's called Wee Sam's World, and I just did it like, I'm his first guest. He interviewed me as his first guest. Yeah. And so I do want to Instagram about that, but I feel like if I Instagram about that, then I'm going to have to Instagram about it some other time. I'm going to have to do some widget about the show. Like, it'll turn into this whole thing. So I've got to figure that out. I've got to figure it out. But I do want to Instagram about the Wee Sam's World. You guys should listen to Wee Sam's World. He's so smart. He's so smart.
He's so great on the show, too. You mentioned Tom Verica. He directed the first 3 episodes, or 3 of the episodes?
He did the pilot, he did the season finale, and then he did, episode 3.
And, you know, he's exec producer, but he's also well-known as an actor. And I'm wondering for each of you how the dynamic changes when you are being directed by a fellow actor, especially somebody who has got so much TV experience as he does.
There's a level of understanding when it comes to Tom. You know, he as an actor really understands the trials and tribulations, what we go through, what we need, the cues that we like from a director. And he also respects, the great thing about Tom is that he respects everybody's own process. You know, everybody comes from a different background, a different school of thought, and he leaves it open for everybody to practice what they want to practice, and yet it's cohesive because there's just this general level of respect that he exudes. And also he's just the warmest, kindest man, and just creates a really fun and lovely environment.
I agree with that. There's working with actors as directors, which Ben articulated very well. And then there's working with Tom, who was kind of the perfect. I mean, Tom is a creature of Shondaland. So not only is he an actor who directs, he's an actor who acts on another show from that shop. And so he the shorthand that he was able to use, and the trust that he was able to engender very quickly of like, I know exactly how to translate your impulse into what's needed here. And his radar about what was needed just became a touchstone for everybody, I think. And so he inspired a lot of confidence. And when we heard he was coming back to do the end, everyone, I think there was just a collective like, perfect. And that's the way we're going to feel every time, if we're lucky enough to keep going, that we get to work with him again.
I feel like Shondaland in general has several actors who are also directors who work regularly. It seems like it's a place that values that kind of experience both on and off behind the camera, which must be nice as actors. Okay, so Ben asks, apologies, but I went down a bit of a rabbit hole today on YouTube, and I watched an episode from 2000 of Law & Order SVU, in which you play a tech guru named Max Knack, and you got to explain how the internet works to detectives Stabler and Benson.
Wow.
And it was everything. So I need you, you know, given that Law & Order is
I'm
like
75 years old.
It seems like Law & Order, you know, especially for New York actors, it's like a rite of passage. I'm wondering if you can remember, you know, talk about that experience, and because I think it was your first appearance on a Law & Order.
It wasn't. And the reason I know that is because it was one of my first jobs of any kind was a Law & Order episode, and it must have been before that. I'd kind of forgotten about that thing because I did the so-called mothership, regular Law & Order, as a defense lawyer, you know, maybe it might have been 6 or 7 times over the course of the life of the show, and beginning, you know, within months of having graduated. So, I had a very typical, you know, I had that New York actor experience, and I still remember how thrilling it was to work on that show, you know, the first time.
And it's nice that it's, it seems like pretty much everyone who you've ever heard of has been on a Law & Order.
Yeah, I haven't. I've never.
You haven't done one?
No, I'd love to.
Never
but
even lived here, and I've done 2.
what the hell? I don't know. I'm like the only guy in a play in the playbill that doesn't have the Law and Order in the bottom.
It's kind of a distinction, actually. I think.
Yeah. Maybe I could just say that in the bottom.
I just want to say, I'll indulge me. I'm very proud of this, which is I got a hung jury off Sam Waterston.
Yes,
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
that's huge.
Yeah, which I took pretty seriously. Like, that they thought it would be convincing that I might actually keep a jury from going with Sam Waterston. And I took a lot of pride in that.
Wow, that is amazing. You should really be proud of that. So, Britt, as the season goes on, we start to see some glimpses of Sandra's backstory, and it's not, you get tantalizing sort of clues, but you don't really get necessarily the full picture. What do you know, as a performer, and do you want to know her full story, or do you want to discover it on the page?
Well, because this was a show that existed before I came to be a part of it, I had heard some rumblings about who Sandra was in the original pilot, and then who they were, because the original pilot was rewritten a good bit, and then when I came on board, things were rewritten more, but I already had these thoughts of who I thought, what her backstory was, where she came from, what happened to her mom, and, the deal with the dad, and so then when we started actually digging deeper into what her backstory would be, it was very different than what I had been playing for like 6 episodes. So that was strange. They're like, her mother died. It was a terrible accident, or, and I was like, I thought she died from cancer, but it was a very confusing thing, but I think it actually helped me because it's not like I was trying to layer in all of these things throughout the season. I also didn't know if they would even address it in the first season at all. So it's not something I paid too much attention to. I just always had it kind of in the back of my head for my own understanding. But then when I found out what it actually was, I was like, oh, that's so cool and dynamic and makes a lot of sense. But I don't know that it necessarily would have helped me early on. And that's what I like about the show. You just get these little pieces of information, and then, when Pandora's box is opened and you get to understand really what that specific character is dealing with in the grand scheme of things, it's so much more fascinating, So it was, it worked. It worked. I mean, it wasn't my preference necessarily, but it worked.
That's so TV. I mean, that's
so
just,
TV.
I mean, episode 9, I found out I was divorced and had, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Remember we were in the table reading.
Yeah, in the table reading. And it's complicated by the fact that we read it more or less cold because we never get the script anyway. And even within that, I don't look a page ahead because I just really enjoy not knowing what's coming because you never get that experience again. And that's what it was. It was like, I remember when Maggie moved, I found out I was divorced with 2 kids.
And you guys all are okay with that, or you just have to be okay
have
with
to
that?
be.
No
It's
choice.
it's Shondaland wide, I believe. I think that's
No, but it's all TV, and even when honestly the joy of TV, and you have to embrace it, is even when it isn't literal plot surprises about who you are. It's still always being made up as you go along, and it's still always morphing because of who you are, and it's morphing in both directions because the history, you're obviously moving forward chronologically, but you're also revealing backwards chronologically, and it's just as the thing takes shape. It's like you have to think of it as improv in this kind of slow game of improv of like as you go you discover who you are, and in each moment you go, okay, this is who I am now.
It's really hard to be in your head as an actor when shooting a show like this because you're just thrown things, and I mean a lot of it there's a school of thought that like a lot of some people believe that like acting is not much except for the people's projection onto the space of what the experience is. And there's a little bit of that going on shooting a show like this because we don't know what our backstories are, but it exists in the world, and it's kind
It
of
helps you keep more. So I'll give you sort of a small example, and then we'll continue. But after the first episode, they had sort of established that Sandra was maybe a little OCD. She was, very organized, and she had everything in her office sort of in its place. And then by episode 3, I had to go face to face with with the character of Kate, and they wanted her to be, all in her, her sort of, she's very precise, and she has everything in her place, and so they needed to differentiate between the two of us. And so then I all of a sudden become cluttered, and I'm messy, and there's stuff everywhere, and there's coffee cans, and I was like, okay, but so this doesn't make a lot of sense for me, because I've actually been playing this, a little more put together, and so then you have to get really creative with why your character would then just throw everything to the wayside and all of a sudden be a mess. So, but it was great because, in my head, I came up with all these reasons. It's so overwhelming for Sandra. She's not doing well. She can't keep it together. So coffee is astray. There are things that are just wild. But, it does throw you for a loop, but it keeps you very involved in the action, which is everything you want as an actor. So embrace it.
Embrace it. Embrace the chaos. So I'd love for each of you to share the best advice you've ever received about acting. It can be from anyone. And I'm going to start with Ben S. over there on the end.
Ben S. I feel like this is The Bachelor. Okay?
The best advice? Well, this is memorable. I don't know if it's the best. It's up there. So I did the miniseries version of Angels in America, and it was directed by Mike Nichols, and I was, in a way that's almost impossible to be in most situations, kind of out of my depth and totally open about being out of my depth, as a film actor at least. I'd worked on that piece as a stage actor, but it was like, wait, I'm going to do this on film with Meryl Streep and Al Pacino? Like, help. And I was very open about that because because Mike was available to my being open about it, so I chose to do it. And it's a very emotional role, and the emotionality of it is kind of key to the story and key to your understanding of the role. And I understood that dramaturgically from doing it on stage in a way that's not helpful for film acting. So I was having a kind of perfect storm of a bad situation of like kind of knowing too much and being too worried about emotion and crying and things like that, in a way that I never would have been if I hadn't worked on it before. And anyway, so I was hung up about that a lot of the time. And if I hit something in the master while they were setting up for the medium, taking lunch, I'd be like, well, fuck, now how am I going to get it again? And if I don't get it, it's not a small thing. It doesn't work if they don't understand that this guy is totally wrecked. And so I would worry about it, and I would say things like, oh, Mike, I feel like I'm pushing. And he'd say, push. Or I'd say, I'd go, it's not happening. It's not happening. He'd go, don't worry, just fake it. It's the movies. And I said to him, I said, when you said that, what are you talking about? Isn't not faking it and being absolutely real more important than ever when you're on screen? Isn't that what Stanislavski and method acting and Lee Strasberg, isn't that what it's all about? He said, no, you've got that wrong. And he was right in the sense that, for all intents and purposes, it is better to just let it happen, just fake it. The worst thing you can do is to worry about it. And I spent way too much time worrying about it. And when you're working with somebody great, it's like, okay, this is one take. What will ruin the next take is if you're fucking yourself up over what's happening in this take. And I learned that over the course of working on that. And I've never felt that shitty about that particular problem ever again.
That's amazing.
And that came from him.
That is amazing.
I love that.
That's
so cool.
I'm so glad I was here for that. I don't even need to be in that experience.
Yeah.
I just learned.
It's so great.
All right, who wants to follow that?
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I mean, this is nothing compared to that. I just, on this show, actually, I had an experience. It was the last day of shooting. It was the last episode, and I had a scene where I'm supposed to be talking to Jasmine, who plays the character of Allison. We're best friends, and I'm dealing with a lot. And I get to the point where I'm, spinning out of control and breaking down over not being capable and not being enough, and I remember the way that it was, just the way the action was written. I had a really hard time wrapping my head around how I was going to make that work within the confines of what I understood they wanted out of the scene. And so luckily it was a short day. It was the last day of shooting. They didn't have a lot to shoot. It was just that scene and like 2 other things. And so I spent like an hour trying to block this scene with Tom and Paul and Jazz, and I just couldn't figure it. We couldn't figure it out. We were trying to make it happen. There was a hug involved. It was physical. It was all very confusing. And Tom said to me, which is again like a testament to how he's so wonderfully compassionate and understanding and empathetic with the process. And he just said to me, look, just do it. And then if it sucks, we'll do it again. And we will just keep doing it until it's good. And you have to trust me that when, we get into the editing room, we will make it good. I promise you. And still, I did not trust him. And I was like, okay, wink, wink. And, we did it so many times. And the end of the story, basically, is that I was editing myself. I've gotten into this habit as an actor, especially on TV, where I will edit myself. I'm not going to put any work out there that I think that they could use against my will. And so I'll stop a take in the middle of doing it because I'll be like, nah, that's crap. Let's try it again. Let's start over. And Paul said to me, and Tom said to me, they both said this to me afterward. They said, wow, you're directing yourself inside and out. You're just directing the crap out of yourself. You're not even finishing a take because you're so worried about what's going to happen. And I was like, you're right. It's something that I've learned over the course of, a decade or however long. It's something that I use when I don't trust people. And not that they're not like totally trustworthy. It's just a bad habit. But then I was talking to Wee Sam's World podcast coming on, guys. And he just said this, he gave me this really great advice. He just said to myself, he said to me, we were driving to dinner to meet you and your lovely wife. And he said, you just got to break out of that. You just got to do something where you feel entirely uncomfortable, but it's not going to be broadcast to the world so that you remember what it's like to just give in to the moment, because I was so afraid of those moments being taken from me and then put out there and then you guys watch them and judge me. And so then the next week he invited me to his acting class and he gave me a script. He was like, don't look at it. I don't want you to read it. I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to play it right now. And we did it. It was me and him and his friend Isaiah. And I just like jumped in. And from that moment on, I felt so much, I finally gave myself the opportunity to just give in and not be afraid of the consequences, not be afraid of what someone's going to use. And I don't even know if this is advice, but he just really encouraged me to go away from that, that instinct that I've had.
I'm so glad I was here for that.
Yeah.
I mean it.
Is that honest?
It's a great
It's so
story.
great.
Really?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Okay, cool.
You guys have that and getting it from each other?
Yeah, no, totally. But that is Wee Sam. That's what he, I'll be like, so I'm having this moment and it's really hard.
The thing is, you're right to have those. You're not wrong to have that guard up. I mean, network TV, man, like
it's hard.
It is, and it's not a place necessarily to trust and give in, and you may have 3 takes or something, and they have to move on. Like, it's very forgivable to learn to direct yourself in that context.
I would argue that a lot of acting classes in general aren't necessarily safe. I'm not someone I was the weird kid at school who didn't love acting class because I always felt like there were a lot of politics going on in the room about it wasn't about the work itself. It was about kind of these games, these chess pieces of trying to impress the teacher or trying to impress someone who's in the room or trying to be better than so-and-so. So there was all that noise going on. And so for years, I couldn't figure out why I hated acting class, and I started hitting on something when I came across this guy named Jack Plotnick. Do you guys know who Jack Plotnick is? He's amazing. He changed my whole outlook on everything. Yeah, so I really recommend this guy. He has a Jack Plotnick. He's an actor. He lives in L.A., but he's a director, and he has this like really interesting school of thought about that mental health of actors. And one of his phrases that I clung on to that I really loved was, especially in an audition situation, it's like you go into an audition room and you see like everybody's like got their pages and like they're mouthing the words, and you see them like going through the faces they're gonna make or whatever the hell.
Oh my God.
And a thing to tell yourself is like, let them be actors. I'm not an actor. I'm just a guy who's coming in to have fun. Within these circumstances that are given to me, and that brought me back to actually like an acting class I had early on. A very wise man named John Sticks, who's since passed away. He had a phrase: "You are enough," and I feel like we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
But it's something that it's a touchstone that you can keep coming back to, and it means something different every few years of your life as you experience life and as you experience, work, and it's just a constant. It's a practice, a Zen practice essentially, and so that one's really stuck with me. You are enough, and it's ever changing, and we put so much pressure on ourselves, and there are so many people around us to I don't know, just to feed it, fuck with our heads and all that, and you just have to come back to that.
What a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much.
Good job,
Thank
to
you,
the
guys.
cast of For the
thanks
People.
for staying.
Premieres tomorrow on ABC. Check it out. Well, you've already seen it, but keep watching it. Thanks so much to the cast.
Thank
Thank you all. Thank you.